let's talk about how we can make this better. Let's come together as a team. And there's also an aspect of that in leadership, to me, that it's very important to have that humility in order to be able to be a better leader. It's trite to say servant leadership, but I'm a big believer in it. If you think you know it all, then you're going to fail.
Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. I'm your host, Jeff Barnes. I just got done with an interview with Brian Fitzpatrick. I think you're really going to enjoy this interview because we talk a lot about the grind of what it takes to become successful as an entrepreneur, an investor, raising capital, having exits, going through M&A, and a lot of really great conversation around the mindset of a successful entrepreneur and CEO. And of course, we talk off camera about a lot of other things that are, relevant to us in our lives and whatnot. And I really enjoy getting to know Brian throughout the course of this interview. And I think you will really appreciate the insights he brings into successfully scaling up a company in some of the most challenging industries out there. Thanks.
Welcome to Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions, the place to learn how to fund, scale, exit, and massively profit as an angel investor or entrepreneur. Brought to you by the Angel Investors Network. And now, here's your host, Jeff Barnes.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. I'm your host, Jeff Barnes. I'm here today with Brian Fitzpatrick. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate you being here. Before we get into all the details of your career, why don't you give people a little bit of a background about who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I was one of those really anxious kids at a very early age that always saw opportunity. So started my first business in second grade, and that sort of led to a series of new opportunities and businesses throughout my early teens. And then I ended up in corporate America working for a small company and getting my shot at sales at 17 years old. I had the benefit of always looking older. With an Italian background, I was able to grow a mustache early on.
Nice.
So I had the opportunity to look older and convince the guy I was working with in a phone center, literally doing phone surveys, to let me be in sales. And I got that opportunity that he gave me at 17 years of age. Now, he knew how old I was, but it was a great opportunity to learn about the banking industry, and he was a great mentor in that space. So that sort of started me on the journey in the professional world. And, I really helped grow his sort of startup business at a very early age, and I caught the bug. And I guess it was probably about 5 years after that, I ended up going to work for Electronic Data Systems, which was not a startup. That was Ross Perot's organization, and I was one of the youngest sales performers and top sales performers in the world for Electronic Data Systems. And I got a lot of formal education there. A lot of education in sales training and system development, life cycle methodology. They threw lots of training at you, and I took every opportunity. And that sort of, after that, I had sold $185 million worth of business for the company through my 3-year tenure, but it was kind of like throwing a pebble in the ocean. You didn't really see the impact. You didn't really see a ripple at all. And so I was recruited to go work for a startup company as an equity partner, contributing equity partner. And I took that opportunity. I was one of 12 people and went to go work for this company. And that was it. I was, it got back to my early entrepreneurial roots. I loved it. We built that company up from nothing in 3 years to a very successful run rate on software revenues. And we sold that to a strategic. And then I just did it again. I went to another smaller company that was struggling. I joined the founders, and we built that company up 3 years and sold that. And then I joined another firm, again, that was sort of struggling. That's the theme. I came in, became the CEO of that organization as well, grew that business, and we that one took longer. That was about 10 years. And that was sort of my last exit. And then started a new one, which is where we are right now. Incredible. Started this business really in earnest in generating and building in about 2020, 2021. And now we're in that early nascent phase of scaling revenues. So that's sort of my journey in a nutshell.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate that. Now I have to ask you, I've interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs. I work with, literally thousands of businesses over the course of my career. And, not everybody makes it. And most of them never go on to become serial entrepreneurs with multiple exits. And I have to guess, and I don't want to assume, but I want to get your take on this. How important was the sales training that you had early on in your career to your overall success in growing businesses?
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
I am a huge believer that everything starts with a sale. I've raised my kids that way. I told them they wouldn't be here if I didn't make a sale. Their mother had to say yes. So, it's everything does start with a sale. And quite frankly, I have been a student of many different sales disciplines. I've immersed myself into the science of selling and joining with the natural artistic talent of selling, which I believe is innate in some people, but I believe it's innate in everybody. We just have to cultivate a way to really treat it as it is, which is a true profession. And I believe that business schools all around America are missing this opportunity to have sales as part of their curriculum, professional selling as part of their curriculum, because I've always been a selling CEO. And I think that's what really makes the most successful companies.
Oh, I mean, 100%, right? I find that when you are a very early company, there's two things that the founder slash CEO cannot delegate, abdicate, turn off, and those are raising capital in the event that you need to raise capital, because a lot of businesses don't, but everybody seems to think you do, and something. And really, it comes down to the lifeblood of the business, which is cash, right? And I say, they always say that the number one reason that businesses fail is because of lack of capital. And I say, no, no, no. Lack of capital is a result of failing to do one of those two things successfully, right? You only
That's
don't
right.
have capital because you suck at either raising money or selling something. And
Right.
so lack of capital, even though, 60%, 70% of the businesses that fail, they say that's the reason. That's not the reason. That was the result. That's what forced you to shut the doors. And I found that these entrepreneurs and I was one, I was an engineer. I was a mechanic in the Navy. I loved turning nuts and bolts and doing the actual work. I loved being an operator. I hated selling. And it took 20 years, for me to really turn that around and say, this is the thing that I can be good at. I should be good at. I need to be good at. And so when you think back through your career, of, you have the sales training early on and you went into a big business. How do you find that it's different when you are, a startup, early stage company with an idea of a product or service or technology versus going into a big business that already has a track record, a history, and, they already have the sales program completely laid out for you? Which do you prefer more and how do you find them to be different?
Well, I can tell you they're vastly different. Like when I was selling at EDS, right? I didn't have to convince them we were going to be in business next year, right?
Right.
I didn't need to, tell them who we were. Everybody knew who we were, right? When you've got these startup companies, nobody knows who you are, right? Number one, and number two, especially like if you're selling to banks, which has been most of my career, like they take you through the ringer. Like they want to make sure that you are, that you pass all their infosec, because you got a cloud-based software. You pass their risk, tolerances, and you have to really understand how to get through those things. So, you're not just selling your product. You're basically selling your company, and they have to believe that your company is going to be there and that if they take a chance on you, it's going to work. So it's not just about really selling your product. It's about selling your company and your concept and why they should take the risk on you in an early stage startup company.
Yeah. And like you said, selling yourself, selling your vision, selling your ability to even be around in a few years. I know when I was working in corporate and I was on the other side, I was on the investor side, and we were doing exactly that. We worked in the insurance business, financial services. It was the exact same thing. We need to know that if we partner with you, you're going to be around long enough for us to continue using this product, software, technology, whatever the case might be. so that we don't end up in a situation where our clients are suffering and we get sued, right? It was all this ongoing technical due diligence that we had to do on a company. And I know as a founder, it's so frustrating. It's like, come on, can we just get to work? But
Yeah,
as
I refer to them, Jeff, as the business prevention departments of those of those companies.
it's true. Yeah, I remember my job was always going out there and finding the technology and finding the great guys and putting the use case together and developing a proof of concept. And by the time we got a proof of concept and a pilot program ready, this is when he brought in the 15 engineers. And it's like, oh my gosh, you guys, all you want to do is, it's like a government bureaucracy. It's like, we just want to sit around and talk about how great we could be or how great it could be or how bad this is going to fail or all the 5,000 different ways you could fail. Whereas an entrepreneur is like, there's probably 5 million ways I could fail, but there's definitely one I can succeed and I will find it. Right. And it's a
Yeah,
different mentality
absolutely.
altogether. Um,
Totally.
Now I have to ask you because you sound like you have the same strange, uh, I'll be nice and say challenge that I have, which is choosing to go into a world that is heavily regulated. It's really, really challenging. There's a lot of barriers to entry. Most of the people that are in that world don't know a thing about a startup or raising capital in the first place. And I find that the financial services, fintech, insurtech, these kinds of spaces that I've spent most of my career in are incredibly challenging to get off the ground. So what made you choose going down the fintech financial services kind of route to, bring your products and services to?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I fell in love with the financial services world when I was young, when I was 17. I really had a great mentor that knew everything about banking. He taught me everything there was about banking and about every aspect of a bank, from the asset to the liability side. And I guess I was a strange young guy, but I really enjoyed learning about banking institutions and even spending time at EDS and selling core systems and asset management systems, and I really got intrigued. So moving into the sort of the startup world in that, I realized I had a whole lot of new challenges now. All the things that we just talked about, right? Getting over all of the risk management reviews from the procurement departments of these organizations, and going through what I call the endless colonoscopy of questions that they throw at you. But here's what really caught me is in financial services, okay? And I picked one of the hardest of the asset classes in mortgage, right? It's the toughest, largest, most complex asset class there is, right? And, when you look at the challenges that they're dealing with, and the manual processes that they have to go through to get things right, it's ripe with opportunity, right? Because I love going in and doing what people say can't be done. We do it this way because it's too difficult to automate. Well, when I hear that, my ears go up, right? And when you look at the industry I came from and the things I've been able to accomplish in my companies with my amazing teams, has been we've developed the firsts in almost every category because we dared to go where everybody said you shouldn't go and it can't be done. But that's also what helped us break through the barrier of the big companies, because they're looking at this little company going, well, wait a minute, the big behemoths can't offer me this. Like, are you serious? You really have that? Well, take a chance on us. Let's do a proof of concept. Let me show you how it works. And if I prove it, let's move on to contract. So, and a lot of that, I learned, start working on the master services agreement like a year before you actually want business from them, and you go through that process so you can be in line with a POC, or align yourself with a company that already has a master services contract, and you'll contract through them, right? And I've had to do that a couple of times just to really start. So really, that's why I chose that, is because the audit and reg tech process is intense, and it's very, very manual, and it is just has a tremendous amount of opportunity to find ways to automate, and that's what I love doing.
So this brings me to another thing that I have really been paying attention to with a lot of founders. We work with athletes as well. anyone in the really high performance world, what I have found is that the struggle is what makes it fun. Do you resonate with that?
It's a sickness. It r
Isn't
it
it?
r it really I don't know why, like, my wife has said to me a couple times, like, "Why do you choose such hard things to do? Like, go open an ice business or something, the ingredients are easy and, you can just with the way you sell, you'll sell it to everybody." And I'm like, "But where's the challenge in that?" Like, I love figuring out difficult problems. And that is really what drives me as an entrepreneur and business owner. And the opportunity to surround yourself with smart people where you can collaborate and together you can figure these things out and come up with solutions that, quite frankly, people didn't believe could be created easily. And it's not easy. That's the thing. It's not easy. It takes time. It takes capital. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of sleepless nights. A lot of people see entrepreneurs as the end result. Oh, he sold this company. He did really, really well. They don't see the sleepless nights. They don't see you waking up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, worrying about your team, worrying about the next round of capital, worrying about payroll, worrying about, will we get that big contract, all of those different things. And I think that's the facade of entrepreneurship that people don't recognize. And when you do the hard stuff, when you're taking on a business that's doing not what everybody's doing, but literally creating blue ocean type opportunities, it's even harder.
Before continuing, please subscribe and share this video to help us reach more people and stay notified of our latest releases. Now, let's continue watching and learning.
100%. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's one of those situations where everybody in the world looks at you as that overnight success. And you're like, yeah, but it was 20 years in the making.
That's
Right? And they don't want to acknowledge that. And I have to say, I thought it was so strange when I just thought everybody wanted to be an entrepreneur. I thought everybody would want that because everybody wants to be their own boss. Everybody wants to run their own show. They don't want to have to worry about working at a company for 40 years and hopefully having a retirement. Like, my eyes were open early on in the financial services world. I read, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was 21 years old. I bought my first house when I was 21 years old. I was like, I'm going to do everything I can to create financial freedom in my life because I don't want to be beholden to somebody else. And of course, it takes forever to get there, right? It's not like it's flip a switch in your brain and tomorrow you start, getting it going, right? And so the struggle of going down that path and saying, okay, this is my vision, this is where I want to go. All of a sudden you run into every roadblock imaginable, right? And you mentioned the stress of waking up 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And I've had, close family relations, really good friends that go, why don't you just give it up? You keep putting yourself through this. Why are you doing that?
I get
And
asked that all the time.
what's your response to them? I'm curious.
It's what sometimes I just have to say to them, you won't understand, right?
Yeah. Because you can't say, I actually really enjoy the lion
Yes.
chasing me all the time.
It's like, why are you beating your head against the wall? Well, you won't understand.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
But
Because on the
it's,
other side is the gold mine.
absolutely. I mean, you understand as an entrepreneur, and I think every entrepreneur understands what it is to dream about something, about a change they want to make, and it's that dream that drives your vision and drives your mission and drives your passion, right? And then you have to do all the practical things to execute, right? So you can't just be a dreamer. You have to be a realist when it comes to the actual practical application and execution of doing this. And it's like I lecture at universities on entrepreneurship, and one of the things, they say, wow, you were a CEO at like 32 years old. And I'm like, yeah, I was a CEO at 32. And they're like, how did you know how to be a CEO? I'm like, oh, well, honestly, I didn't. I mean, I had no idea what the hell I was doing
Right.
at
Yeah.
32. But what I did know is I knew how to sell. And this company that I came into and put my own capital into, and I gave them a plan, which, by the way, investors believe your plan when you're also writing a check, right? So, I put the capital in. I said, look, this is the plan. Here's how we're going to turn the product. We're going to change the way we're going to relaunch this product. We're going to relaunch this company, and we're going to move forward. What I did know how to do was to bring a product to market, and I did know how to sell it. Okay. As far as managing cap tables and, all the things you have to do on governance and, all of those things, I learned that along the way, quite frankly, by making mistakes, right? I made a lot of mistakes early on. And, it's like everybody sees, oh, but you won, you sold that company for a good amount of money and everybody did well and that sort of thing. But what they don't see is all the little failures of the battles along the way and how you're taking that, putting it away and learning from that experience. So, I'm a much better CEO, today, obviously, because of all the things, not just that I've done right, but all the mistakes I've made along the way. And that's part of that journey. And, so yes, you may be banging your head against the wall, but if you're not learning from that experience, then you're not growing as an entrepreneur, and you will just stay stagnant.
I love that. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's about the journey, right? And it's not that we like struggling. Of course, we don't want to struggle. And I think that's something that you can't convince people of that because, like, yeah, but we watch you do it all the time. You obviously must be a sadist. You really like this. No, what we really like is the person we become, right?
That's
And I
right.
think,
And Jeff, it's not only the person we become, but it's the people that we grow around us. And to me, that is so valuable when you see these people succeed around you and you see their families benefit. That's all part of it to me. It's just, I haven't built any one of these companies on my own. And I think that that's being able to grow and build an inspiring, organization with the right culture that everybody grows from and everybody contributes and everybody wins in the end. That's an amazing experience to me.
I think it is probably one of the most fulfilling pieces of being the boss, right? Or being the founder. We have a term, a lot of people have heard of trickle down economics. We
Yeah,
actually talk about torrential downpour economics, which is, think about all the businesses that have been spun up and industries even that have been created because of Steve Jobs, because of Bill Gates, because of Jeff Bezos, because of Elon Musk, right? Going back in time, the Henry Fords of the world, the Rockefellers of the world, love them or hate them, many of them. The fact you cannot deny the fact that they have created not just people around them that have flourished and jobs for millions of people, but entire industries.
absolutely.
And I think that there's something really cool about that. That's hard. I don't know how you put it into words, right? But it's becoming this visionary leader. And someday you wake up, because this doesn't happen overnight, but someday you wake up and you realize not only do people rely on you, like that's the part that's scary a lot of times. Like you were saying, waking up at 2, 3 in the morning, trying to figure out how you can make payroll happen. Not only do they rely on you, but even when you fail a little bit, they're still willing to be there and support you and follow you, and they grow as a result, right? And we all win as a result.
Absolutely. And by the way, that's one of the things that I learned. It took me a little while to learn this, but it's okay to be vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Because if they see you as this infallible person that is just not capable of making mistakes or can never be wrong, then it's hard for them to see that environment. But if they see you say, "Listen, I really screwed that up, guys. That was
Yeah.
that was on me. Let's talk about how we can make this better. Let's come together as a team." And so I think that there's also an aspect of that in leadership to me that it's very important to have that humility in order to be able to be a better leader. It's trite to say servant leadership, but I'm a big believer in it
Okay.
because if you think you know it all, then you're going to fail.
Yeah.
It's as simple
Yeah.
as that.
And we hear that term if you're in a room where you're the smartest person, you're in the wrong room, right?
Mhm.
And I do find that to be one of those, it is true. You always want to be surrounding yourself with smart people. But the problem I think that a lot of folks run into as the CEO founder is not necessarily knowing how to surround themselves. The businesses that fail versus the businesses that succeed. The ones who succeed are the ones like you just said. learning how to surround yourself by people who can lift you up. And maybe they are not smarter in the big picture vision. Maybe they don't understand the big picture vision as well as you do, but they have something that you don't have. And surrounding yourself with those types of people is vitally important, as the CEO, as the founder, as a leader in general. And I'd imagine that's been a big part of your overall success.
It's been a huge part of my success. And, and I can tell you that culture has always been very important to me. And, when I was running one of my other companies that we've previously sold, it was getting big and we were doing some acquisitions. And, one of the mergers that we did, very different culture on the other side. And it was difficult
Sure.
because, you've had a CEO who thought very differently, bright guy, very smart guy, but thought very differently about the culture than what my culture was, and it created a lot of issues within the organization. And I learned a big lesson from that. So it's very critical to preserve that culture at all costs, because we were losing good people all of a sudden. The good people that would run through walls with me are running for the exit. And I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? And it was happening right under my nose, and I didn't see it until it was too late. And because the company was getting so big, and that's one of the things that I really I strive to preserve. And one of the ways I strive to preserve that is by getting the right leadership in place. And even if it's a merger, putting the right leadership in place. So who's going to survive? It's the one who understands and celebrates and drives your culture.
Yeah, I found that's really important. And it's also very, very difficult.
It is.
You can like people and you can think they'd be great to be on the team, only to find out there's not a good cultural fit. And then there's people that I found like, man, I don't really want to be friends with this person necessarily, but man, they're really, really good and they're a great fit for our company.
Right.
And I think a lot of immature founders, CEOs struggle with that initially, right? You hear about so many people just hiring their friends and it never works out, right? You can't be besties and have really hard conversations about performance, right? It's really, really difficult.
That's true.
So before we run out of time, there's a couple of really important things I want to ask you. And I think you've alluded to them a little bit, but you've obviously had success in both raising capital, running companies, and exiting businesses. And I find that most founders struggle with doing all three of those things. Almost never possible for them to be the successful CEO of a company and the capital raiser at the same time. Right? It's very, very difficult to go out there and raise the money and run the business at the same time. It's also very difficult for a lot of CEOs to get to an exit because they were so focused on just getting something off the ground. So let's start with just the capital raising side of things versus running a company. How do you navigate that, or how have you navigated that in the past to be successful?
Well, it's a critical part of my job. And if the CEO is not capable of raising capital, that's a problem. Okay. So I believe it's one of the key qualifications of a chief executive is to really be the chief money raiser, right? You're the chief sales officer, the chief, money raiser. It doesn't mean you don't have people that's running sales for you. It doesn't mean you don't have a CFO, but it does mean that you are the one that is setting the vision. You are the one that is selling the vision, and you are the one that's going to have to deliver on the vision. So I found a couple things important. So first of all, I've always had the ability to invest in my own companies, to put my own money at work. And that's very important for investors to see. Because if you're just out there taking their money and telling them what a great company you have and a great idea you have, it's not as believable until you're writing a 6-figure check or 7-figure check and you're putting money into it alongside of them. Okay. And that's very, very critical, because it's all about confidence. If investors don't have confidence in the CEO, they're not going to have confidence in your vision. They're not going to have confidence in your idea or your team. So it's absolutely critical. And balancing that is very important, right? So a big part of what I do is I make the rain on the big deals happen as well.
Right.
Right. So you have to balance to me, that's the lifeblood of the company. Early on, it's pure capital and you're in that pre-seed phase. And then that pre-seed, phase turns into seed, turns into early, growth. And if there's no early growth, you can't just keep going back to the well with no revenue. So you have to be good at both. You have to be good at driving the sales of the business because early on you can't afford, a chief revenue officer. I mean, knock wood, thank the Lord, we just brought on a chief revenue officer at Credible, right? So he's wonderful. He's taken some of the heat off of me, but it was me doing it, in that early phase. So absolutely critical, Jeff, that you're good at raising capital and balancing every other aspect, because really you may have a finance guy, but you're also the chief financial officer in the early days. You're also the head of development. And then you start to really build those along the way, those resources through the team.
And so how important is it that you have a second in command that can help you with driving, business operations?
Well, I've been very fortunate at Credible to have a second in command. He's he's my co-founder and partner. I refer to him as, it's like when Sully landed that plane on the Hudson, he had a good first officer sitting next to him, Jeff Skiles, right? So, I always said, look, if we're going to land a plane on the Hudson, I can't do this alone. I need somebody calm and steady. I need somebody who's going to really help manage us through this crisis and these processes. And that's what my chief operating officer does. So it's absolutely critical to have somebody who's handling the administrative side of the business and the operational side and managing the KPIs and is development delivering what they're supposed to deliver on time? Is operations doing what they're supposed to do? All of those things are the key metrics that I rely on him to do while I'm building the capital, the revenue, and driving the vision, of the business. I don't want to get involved in all those administrative things and all those, operational things. I count on him. So it's very important to have a second in command. And to me, I think you need a good chief operating officer and you need a strong finance person, even if that finance person is a fractional CFO.
Right. I find that incredibly helpful too. So, well, let's talk a little bit about Credible. What is it? Why did you start it? And what's your vision there?
Sure. So Credible, it's interesting. After I sold, our last business in the fintech world, financial services and mortgage, I signed a long-term non-compete to sort of stay out of that business for a while. But I was really looking for a new opportunity, and I was watching what was going on in the CBD, hemp, cannabis, marijuana world, the dietary supplements, and I really felt that there was going to be a significant growth in those areas. And there was going to be a flight, not a complete exit of big pharma, but a movement towards other supplements and healthier ways than just having America on prescriptions all the time. There was going to be a focus on sort of holistic health and preventative health through better living and dietary supplements. So. And especially, in that cannabis world where it was the wild, wild west. So Credible was really founded to help drive safety, transparency, and quality by bringing down the cost of compliance and all those things by automating a lot of those components from the e-commerce side all the way into the ERP and manufacturing side and all the standard operating procedures and the governance that has to take place, typically manually. We've automated a lot of that. So we've created a lot of firsts in that industry. And one of them is a blockchain-based lab system that collects lab reports from labs, writes them into a smart contract ID, into a blockchain, and enables companies to manage them, on an enterprise basis, and then distribute those to the supply chain, the people that need to see them. A lot of mistrust in the industry because people were falsifying lab reports. I went in there, talked to people, saw it firsthand, and that's just one area of what our technology does to solve it. So we are a supply chain ecosystem that drives transparency and quality and compliance in the industry.
Awesome. And how far along are you guys?
So we're scaling our revenue. We are continuing to grow our MRR, our ARR. We really started scaling revenues meaningfully about 18 months ago. So we're in that very early growth phase of continuing to add, the high margin multi-tenant cloud-based tenants and customers to our platform, and we're now at the phase we can bring on a chief revenue officer and start scaling that. So we're in the midst of our third and God willing, our final capital raise before we go, if we go to an institutional raise. But with this, we're still in sort of the early angel rounds. This will be number 3, and we'll hopefully be completing that over the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Awesome. That's great to hear, Brian. Well, we are out of time here, but I really want to thank you for being here, and maybe we'll have to have you back on a later date when you've finalized all your fundraising, you're getting closer to maybe that exit, because it'd be really interesting to hear about the rest of the journey through Credible.
Absolutely. Appreciate what you're doing in the industry and talking to all the entrepreneurs. And so we know it's not such a lonely crowd, because it is a lonely job. So appreciate what you're doing, Jeff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I appreciate that as well. So why don't you tell folks how they can find you guys online?
Sure. www.credible, credible.com. And through credible.com, you can follow. I have a broadcast. We've got a podcast. We have lots of resources that you can get to through YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Follow us on LinkedIn as well.
Beautiful. All right. Well, you have been watching or listening to the Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions podcast with Brian Fitzpatrick at Credible. I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share, and give us your comments. Let us know what you thought about this. Thanks so much for being here. And Brian, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.